this is a very warm crowd. Thank you.
It's the day after Election Day.
Yeah.
You know, this was the movie we needed. She said, alienating a third of the audience. Welcome and congratulations. I feel like I want to look at all your eyes and see if like you're drying your tears, because I know when I finished seeing this movie, I was blubbering and like a mess. And I was wondering for you guys what it was like when you saw the movie for the first time and that final moment in the final scene after having put all this work into it as well.
We were in tears, hugging each other, saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe that just happened." I don't know. When did you watch it? Have you recently?
Like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
I saw it about a few months ago, just before the final sort of finishing of the edit. And then watched it again a couple of weeks ago and couldn't believe kind of how relevant it was, obviously, with everything that's been happening.
So obviously, you know, you both knew who Ruth and Marty were before signing on to this, but what was it about the script or maybe Mimi or conversations that you had that made you want to be a part of this film?
I loved the idea that we had a female superhero movie in which there were no superpowers. It's a story of a woman who quite literally changed the face of the world that we all live in. And as the father of a daughter, I thought this was an amazing movie that I could give to her, that she could see that it's possible to change the world without a cape. Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, it's all about RBG. It's the fact that she came from very modest circumstances and had trial after trial and tribulations and all these obstacles, and the odds were constantly against her, and she was such an outsider. And the fact that she went on to become a justice on the Supreme Court is testament to how ridiculously amazing she is.
When did you first become aware of her? Because I think you grew up in America and you know all the Supreme Court justices. But when did you first know about her?
I knew of her because she's become, particularly in the last few years, she's become this punk icon. And so I didn't know the depths of the story. I didn't know anything about her relationship and her family. I just had the wonderful image of Justice Ginsburg in her robes with her amazing collars, which has been, you know, put out all over the world. But it wasn't until reading the screenplay and then seeing all the moments that led up to her becoming the woman that she is today.
I understand there was a dinner with the two of you and Justice Ginsburg and Mimi, your director. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Was it nerve-wracking? I mean, did you feel like you were kind of like trying out for her a little bit? Can I play you or can I play your late beloved husband?
Well, the first time we met Ruth, she couldn't take her eyes off Armie.
I think it's more of a height thing. She's about this tall, you know. Now we met her in her chambers. We went to, that was the first time I met her. I don't know if you met her.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, so we were invited to her private chambers at the Supreme Court, and we showed up and we went through the really intense and rigorous screening process to get through. Then we got through and we were waiting for her, and then in breezes this incredibly powerful, minute little woman, and she was so friendly and open with us, and really kind of allowed herself to be an open book in ways that she didn't necessarily have to. So we hung out in her private chambers for a little bit, and then she gave us access to the Supreme Court, and we had a big tour, and just us, and we really kind of walked around and saw everything, and then was that night or the next night, we found out what her favorite restaurant was, and we invited her to dinner, and then we all just sat there and ate and drank wine, and she told stories, and you know, the longer the night went, the more funny she got. And she has an incredibly dry and wry sense of humor. She's very funny, but she also, because she's a Supreme Court justice, every single word that comes out of her mouth is directly translated into the interpretation of law. So if you ask her a question, and we didn't really want to ask her a lot of questions about the law and all that, because it's all public record, you can find that anywhere. But if you ask her a question about anything in the past or anything that happened or her opinion on anything, she would sit and really internalize your question. And what I read into it as was she was evaluating everything she was going to say and what the ramifications of it would be. And then she would sit there for a long time where you kind of end up looking around and being like, do I jump in or do I let her wait? And then she would answer the question in the most eloquent and incredible ways, you know, in a way befitting of a Supreme Court justice.
Did you have questions for her? When you have access to her for this period of time, what did you want to know in order to be able to play her or to play Marty?
Initially, it was about building up trust. I think I feel if you're someone, a group of people are coming to make a film about your life, there must be a lot of nervousness. There's a bit of anxiety in that. And I think at first probably it takes a little bit of time to get to know each other. And that's what was so important about that trip, is just having a bit of time to be human together, to just get to know each other as friends. So I went to see Ruth. I asked to have a little bit of time with her on my own, just to be in the house together. She showed me around her apartment and showed me her desk in her bedroom, which is literally about this far from her bed, so that she can get up in the middle of the night. If she has an idea, she feels inspired to write something down, it's right there. And she has this relationship with her work that it's not like work and private life. It's all encompassing. She lives and breathes the law every single moment of the day. And you can see she cares so deeply about America. She's a woman who has stuck by her beliefs. She has fought for those beliefs from the very beginning, and that's what I felt when I met her, just the absolute integrity of this woman.
Since we're in a room full of actors here, and I'm sure I wanted to talk to you, especially about just the physical transformation. And you wore contact lenses. You learned, you had a vocal coach. You learned how to walk, or you practice walking differently, and just how long that whole process took and what it was like for you when you were transformed.
I become very detail obsessed when I'm taking on a role. I tend to have a little bit of OCD, so I just become meticulous about how that person behaves. As you say, a lot of it was in terms of the physicality, was working with the hair and makeup departments very closely. I was looking at these images of Ruth and going through, tracking from the 50s to the 70s, looking at her face in a very detailed way. I then had this idea, because her mouth shape is quite different from my own. I have these horrible British teeth. So I had this idea that I wanted to go and get my teeth capped, so that then I could imitate the shape of her mouth, which then obviously affects the way that you move your tongue, which affects your voice. So that was so I spent a lot of time at the dentist in pre-production trying to get these teeth in the right way. And then it's about using contact lenses. So had coloured contact lenses that we trialed lots of different pairs, lots of different versions to find the ones that would be just right. But I love. That's what I love about acting, is that of being someone different from yourself, of being able to leap into the part and become another person. That's why I signed up.
Did you have that moment when your teeth were in and the contacts were in, and your hair is however it is, and you're walking in that very distinct way that she does walk? And do you have that, like, okay, I've transformed?
Yes, it is. It's really, I find it really key to have a long preparation period. So it's about, ideally as long as possible, sort of 3 months, by the time that you actually come to set and you've worked out the exact wigs that you're going to use, and we did lots and lots of photographs, lots of tests before we got to set, so that, as you say, by that time that I'm there, I feel like I can become her and I can inhabit her. But the detail and the preparation, I find, is vital in order to have that freedom on set, so that you can be in the moment. That you don't want to be a Madame Tussauds waxwork of someone. You've got to live and breathe it. So ideally, you've done enough preparation that you get to set that you're inspired and you can take risks and play, as we did.
Armie, did you cap your teeth as well?
I always keep my teeth capped just in case.
They're very good. They're very good.
No, for me, it was a little bit less about a physical transformation into Marty. I tried the same kind of thing with the production. I said, as the movie goes, I would love to get a little bit more and more bald, like shave my head a little bit here and here, and then eventually, by the end, be totally bald, because Marty was, and that was a logistical issue with shooting because we had to go kind of back and forth between scenes. And they're like, then we have to make you a wig, and wigs never look good on guys. That's just not going to work. Just go. So for me, it was less about getting the physical aspects of Martin Ginsburg right, but more about nailing down his essence. And there were a few really great things I was able to pull on. I mean, there were some great interviews where Justice Ginsburg and Party Marty, as I like to call him, would be on stage together, and she would provide this really eloquent answer and very detailed and all that, and then she'd finish a long answer, and then he would just go and say something really pithy. And my biggest clue for getting into Martin and sort of understanding who he was at the root of himself was his cookbook. He actually wrote a cookbook, and the example that I've used before is that he had a recipe for baguettes. And anybody here who bakes bread knows that a baguette has about 7 ingredients, but he had a 7-page recipe for how to make baguettes. And it was so meticulous. I mean, even leave it like on this side for 12 minutes, then flip it to this side for 13 minutes, then put it in the oven, and 7 minutes in, open the oven and spray water, 2 sprays on the sides, not the top or the bottom. Then after that, it just totally encapsulated how detail-oriented he was, and that's one of the things that allowed him to be really one of the preeminent tax attorneys in the world, but also his descriptions of things were really funny and dry, and you could feel his sense of humor infused into this thing. And then, of course, talking to Daniel Stiepelman, who wrote the movie, who is Ruth Bader Ginsburg's nephew, the stories that he had of Uncle Marty were always he just had a sweetness to him. He was incredibly smart, incredibly accomplished, and incredibly strong, but his strength didn't manifest itself in any sort of sense of domineering, of his family or anything like that. His strength was being totally confident in himself at all times, even if that meant defying the gender norms of the time and cooking and getting the kids ready and doing all that stuff. I mean, it would be really hard for you to find other men in the 50s and even into the 70s who were willing to do that, but not only willing, but took such pride in it. He seemed like the consummate partner who would do whatever it took, knowing that the family was this one holistic unit. So for me, I wanted to get that vibe of Marty right more than the physicality, because we're very physically different, but I wanted to get that right.
It was funny, as I was watching it, I thought you couldn't script a character like him because you wouldn't believe it. Yeah. And
everyone I spoke to, which included some of his family, I talked to a bunch of his students, and everybody said, this version of Marty that you have in the movie isn't right. He was better than that, which is really hard to believe and makes me feel like a real failure.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit. I thought one of the scenes that I loved was when the practice scene. And when you're, practicing giving your arguments, and you've got, your fake justice judges sitting there. How was that scene to shoot? Because it's so tense and stressful, and also very, very strong. It's simultaneously very kind of empowering and heartbreaking at times.
Well, it was actually great fun because as soon as Justin Theroux was on set, we just all fall about laughing, don't we? He brings such a humour and a levity and to the film set. So it was actually, and that's what we wanted, you know, all the way through. This was a true love story between these people, and that's partly why they had such power and such force. They had immense respect for each other, and it was a true partnership. And so throughout the film, it was so important to capture the fun that they had as a family, the humor. You know, it's impossible. It's hard work being a lawyer. You know, it's long hours for both of them. You know, Marty was a eminent tax attorney, so they both worked incredibly hard. But the family was always vital and always important, and the root of everything for them. I think that's where they both drew so much strength. So within that scene, you see with their daughter, you see actually they are, even though they're having arguments between themselves and like any normal family, there are tensions, but ultimately they're all on the same side and they're all fighting for the same things.
I like that about with the daughter. I feel like sometimes you watch a movie about especially someone very heroic like RBG, and there's nothing, people are afraid to show something that might be even slightly controversial about her. And I appreciated that you could see that she has, just like you said, she has such a lawyer mind that there are times that it could have been tough being her daughter. You know, and I thought I was wondering how you sort of navigated portraying that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was important to show that, you know, Ruth has an incredibly fast mind. She is, you know, she is a genius. She has an incredible memory. She is very, very pragmatic when it comes to the facts.
It's Marty.
So then sometimes emotionally, it was harder. We wanted to show that sometimes that was harder, that sort of that empathy with her daughter was difficult. And Ruth her mother had died when she was very young, so that was a huge catalyst for her. And she felt in many ways she wanted to do her mother justice. So then you see that with her daughter. She wants the best for her daughter. That is her driving force. She knows that, like for herself, that economic freedom is the key to having power in the world, and that comes from education. And so that's what she's trying to push her daughter into. But obviously sometimes it's a little bit too much when you're a teenager and you want to go and express yourself and be kind of a bit of a rebel. And so that it was important. I'm sort of going into a lot of blur, but I think that's what it was at the root of it. It was very much she was coming from a point of care, but it's complex.
Tell me what it was like, what kind of set Mimi made for everyone. I mean, did you guys have a rehearsal process? There was such good chemistry, such a supporting, loving chemistry between the two of you. I don't know if you rehearsed beforehand or if you knew each other before.
We met on this, right? Did we meet?
Had we met before? I can't remember.
Yeah, a lot of chemistry. No, I think we met in Montreal.
No, we didn't. We met Washington. Didn't we meet Washington?
Washington. Yeah, Washington.
Was that
For the movie. It was for yes,
movie.
yeah.
But I'm trying to think if we'd ever bumped into each other before. I can't remember.
I don't know.
This is really boring
Yeah.
for everyone. Sorry.
But there were rehearsals, and most of them took place in Mimi's apartment in Montreal, where she was staying when we shot the movie, and it was more or less just script meetings. We only a few times ever put things up on their feet. It mostly involved us just sitting around in her living room, breaking down the script and going over everything, discussing the characters and what we wanted to do. And then also she was very generous as a director because she really included us on her process of how she needed to mold this scene so that it ended here, which fed into this scene, which then translated into this scene. And she gave us an idea as to the exact emotional trajectory she wanted to create. And she's very good at that. I mean, that's not every director can do that. But I mean, as you see, by the end, you follow the emotional journey of these people really well. And that's not all the time in every movie that you watch. But that was really kind of it for the rehearsals. I mean, obviously we talked about it, and we met a few times on our own and discussed things over dinner or lunch or whatever. But yeah, that was really our rehearsal process.
Is that how you like working? I mean, if you could choose with films that you do, would you want to have that time and sitting down with the director and doing that? I know, because I feel like sometimes there are long rehearsal processes, and sometimes it's like, hear your side, show up.
There are long rehearsal processes, but I've never been involved in a rehearsal process that is too long. I think the more time you get beforehand, as Felicity said, the more free you're allowed to be on set. Because if you're trying to figure it out while the cameras are set up, the lights are set up, everything's ready to go, it's a pressure cooker environment, and pressure is never the best friend of creativity. I mean, pressure can make diamonds, and something can go right, and then boom, you have something you weren't expecting. But you really want to find your way into this so that when they set up the camera and they say action, I like to feel like I'm not feeling my way through the first take to figure out where this should go. I want to have an idea and then be surprised by whatever happens. That's.
Was there a scene that was particularly, I don't know, rewarding for you to shoot, or even challenging for you to do?
I think, as Armie said, Mimi included us in so many aspects of all departments in terms of the set design. She reconstructed all of the locations exactly how they were in Marty and Ruth's life. The attention to detail was exquisite. So we always, when we were in those apartments, we felt like we were at home. It was a very easy atmosphere. I think she had totally the right temperature of how much to rehearse, that you want to feel enough, that you feel comfortable, that you get the DNA of the scene without feeling like you've done something to death. And I think she was great, and also making it a family. That's what it felt like. She wasn't coming from a place of ego. It wasn't all about her. It was very an inclusive process, and it was going out for dinner. It was calling her at any time. It was a very open dialogue, and I think for this kind of film, that's exactly what was needed, because it was about you needed to feel like we could make mistakes on set, that we could try something out, that we could push it. I remember we did that scene. Do you remember we did that dancing scene when we were dancing to a record with Jane? Yeah. And that was something that wasn't, we hadn't planned particularly. It was just in the moment. And Mimi created a set where things like that can happen, which makes it darn cool.
When you're thinking about your next projects to take, do you ever, is there an added stress of playing, and you've both done it before, even before this movie, but playing an actual person who lived or who is living? Does that sit on your shoulders a little bit more, I guess?
Yes and no. There also is a huge benefit of playing a real person, especially someone as recognizable as Justice Ginsburg is. You have so much material to draw from. It's not like the onus is on you to create this character. You have decades of information to pull on, and how she handles herself in different situations, or lectures that Marty gave in class where he revealed things about himself, or dinner party stories where they talk about how Marty was at a dinner party and all that. So in a way, having a real person play their own character before you do takes a lot of the pressure off you. Conversely, there is also the flip side of that, especially with the Ginsburgs. It's Bader Ginsburg. There's family. There are their children, especially if they've lost their parent, or if they've lost whoever it is that you're playing. You want to do it in a way where they're not only happy with what you've done, but also it fills them with a sense of pride, or almost like a reunion. I mean, that's the best thing you can say when you actually finish a project and someone who is involved with the family season goes, God, you really got that right, because they know. And that also means that you can feel good about what you've done as an actor, as much as any actor feels good about what they've done.
We just have a little bit of time, but I do want to get to some audience questions. What was your greatest failure, on a happy note, and how did you deal with it, and how did you overcome it?
It's really personal. Felicity?
Failure. Well, you have to have failure, don't you? You have to have failure because otherwise you don't get better and stronger. So of course, I mean, throughout everything, I mean, being an actor, part of the job is failure. I mean, how many
Had bad auditions
of going to auditions? It's a job where you are putting yourself on the line a lot, as everyone knows. You are often in a position where you feel like you're putting yourself up to be judged. And sometimes it doesn't always go your way. And I think actors are incredibly strong in that sense. And there's a toughness that you have to have. And you learn that from all the people telling you you're not good enough, you're not right for this, you're not tall enough, you're not, whatever it might be. So you develop quite a thick skin.
I feel like saying that something is a failure is really, it's a lack of perspective on our part. Because I can look back over my career and think, God, I really bombed that audition. What a failure. And then later realize that if that would have happened, then I wouldn't have been able to do X, Y, and Z or whatever. So anything that seems like a failure, once you get enough distance from that, it always looks like a very necessary part of your own story. So, if you feel like anything is a failure, give yourself time. You'll get over that and realize everything happens exactly like it's supposed to and exactly like it's going to, and there's nothing you can change about it anyway.
Because we'll end on a happy note. What was the best audition you ever did?
I don't think I've had a best audition.
When does anyone feel good about an audition?
You never walked out and you were like, nailed it.
Oh, I have, and they've all been terrible auditions.
There's hope. There's hope for everyone. All right. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for coming. Thank you, Felicity and Armie.
Thank you, guys.
Wonderful job on the movie.